Welcome to U.S. Immigration TV. Now, are you a green card holder, or what we call LPR, who left the U.S., let's say in late 2019, and then the COVID pandemic struck and you were not able to return to the U.S. within 1 year? And in fact, maybe while you were gone, your green card expired. So what can you do? How can you return to the U.S.? What are the risks? And what can you expect? Well, in this video, I will answer these questions. So of course, make sure to watch until the end. And of course, please like and subscribe to this channel. And if this situation may not apply to you, but it does apply to someone you know, maybe a family member or a friend who's stuck outside the U.S., they're a green card holder, perhaps forward this video link to them. First, everyone knows that if an immigrant or lawful permanent resident, what we call LPR, remains outside the U.S. for more than a year, it's considered as though they have abandoned their green card. Now, if they have a re-entry permit, they can stay outside the U.S. for up to 2 years. But we know that many LPRs traveled outside the U.S. in late 2019, and then the COVID pandemic struck. There were shutdowns, lockdowns, travel restrictions, flight cancellations, and people had difficulty in booking return flights. Green card holders were also afraid to fly out of fear of contracting COVID because perhaps they had some underlying condition. Many had even contracted COVID while abroad, or they had tested positive. Some wanted to wait for the vaccine and booster shots. In the meantime, more than a year went by, and perhaps their green card even expired while they were outside the U.S. So now the question becomes, how can they get back to the U.S.? What are their options? In my opinion, there would be two basic options. Number one, apply at the U.S. Embassy or Consulate for a returning resident or SB1 visa, or number two, board a plane and be prepared to demonstrate and document to the CBP officer at the airport that you did not intend to abandon your green card. Now, of course, another option, which I'll just briefly mention, would be to be petitioned again. But I think that that is not a realistic option, especially, let's say, if a person originally got their green card as a married child or a brother or sister of a U.S. citizen, or even by an employer, and they're no longer working for that employer. It could take many, many years of waiting, and even an immediate relative petition by a spouse or an adult child can take several years now, but I just wanted to put that out on the table. So let's now discuss what I consider the two options for a green card holder, lawful permanent resident, or what I will refer to as an LPR, to get back to the U.S. after having overstayed or been outside the U.S. for more than a year, especially because of COVID. SB1 visa. Now, an immigrant can apply for a returning resident or SB1 visa at the U.S. Embassy by proving, among other things, that their prolonged absence from the U.S. was for reasons beyond their control. However, it's been my experience that the embassies are becoming more and more strict in granting this visa because of COVID, because they are very much aware that daily flights have resumed for most countries, and it's difficult to even get an appointment at the embassy for your SB1 visa interview. I had one case or consultation where the LPR applied for an SB1 visa in 2021. And it took more than a year before they could finally be scheduled for an interview at the embassy, of course, because of reduced staffing due to COVID. But their application was ultimately refused or denied in 2022. So it is an uphill battle with SB1, but SB1 visa or returning resident is an option. Board a flight. Another option is to board a flight to the U.S. and then make or plead your case with the officers at the airport rather than to a consul at the embassy with an SB1 visa. I know some airlines, in fact, were refusing to board green card holders if they were outside the U.S. for a long time, especially if the green card had expired. They would show up at the airport, but for whatever reason, the airline says you cannot get on the plane. However, this is wrong, and the airlines should not be doing that. In fact, CBP put out a reminder or a fact sheet on the requirements for boarding LPRs. Now, as for green card holders or LPRs with unexpired and valid permanent resident cards, CBP notes that, quote, passengers with a valid unexpired permanent resident card may be boarded without any additional documentation, unquote. Now, please note there is no mention in this memo about being outside the U.S. for any length of time. It's just simply if a person has an unexpired green card, the airline should not be refusing to board them. Now, as for LPRs with expired permanent resident cards with 10-year validity, CBP reminds airlines that, and I quote, LPRs with expired I-551 may be boarded without penalty, provided the card was issued with a 10-year expiration date. Now, just so you know, there were a few years ago, or many years ago, some green cards were issued without any expiration date, but now almost every green card has a 10-year validity. So even if the green card expired, you could still board the plane. So you can see LPRs with a green card should be allowed to board a plane even if the green card has expired, and the airlines are warned that they, and I quote, should not be determining admissibility of travel outside the parameters of the document requirements. In other words, airlines should not consider themselves to be CBP officers deciding who can and cannot come to the U.S. Now, while I cannot guarantee results, it's been my experience and the experience of other immigration attorneys, really, that it is best to deal with CBP at the airports on the issue of overstaying versus applying for an SB1 visa. And this is because CBP officers seem to be far more flexible than the consuls at the embassies. And many of the CBP officers, they have had COVID. Some of the officers, unfortunately, had died from it while working on the front lines at the airports. Of course, you should be prepared to be sent to secondary inspection. And I want to be clear, it is not custody or detention. Secondary is just a more in-depth questioning of a person than at primary inspection or at the immigration booths, because most of the time at the booths, the officers should be spending no more than 45 seconds with a person. And obviously, an evaluation of a person who overstayed is going to take a lot longer, so that's why they send them off to secondary so they can handle more people at the booths. But usually, in secondary, there are more senior inspectors for questioning you. And if you are going to pursue this option, or if you're going to still pursue SB1, I would strongly suggest that you first consult with an attorney who can evaluate your case, even via phone. You don't have to see them in person. And I know at my office, we have had either, of course, in-person consultations, but we have also have phone consultations with people from anywhere else in the world. You can be anywhere, the Philippines, India, Pakistan, wherever. And consulting with an attorney, the attorney can evaluate your case, can assist in gathering documents and the evidence and packaging your presentation, demonstrating that when you left the U.S., you never intended to abandon your lawful permanent resident status, and also document your efforts to try to get back to the U.S. and how, let's say, COVID prevented and created delays in you being able to do so. It is important to know that if you are a green card holder, CBP cannot send you back to your home country in what we call airport to airport, nor can they force you to sign forms to give up your green card, such as the form I-407. You should not sign that. Only an immigration judge can order a person's green card be taken away due to abandonment, not by a CBP officer. And you should probably be saying, I want to speak with my attorney as well. And by consulting with an attorney ahead of time, before you fly back to the U.S., you could be properly briefed so you know what to expect and how best to truthfully answer questions in secondary. Now, I hope you have found this video informative, and of course, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. I'm Michael Gurfinkel, and thank you for watching U.S. Immigration TV.